All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Rise Urban Nation. I had to fix my lighting real quick. I forgot, when you as chocolate as I am, you gotta make sure the lights hit at every different angle. Your host Taryell Simmons, and I'm back for another episode of Rise Urban Nation. And I got a special guest in the building. I've been waiting for this brother to come through. He's been ducking and dodging me for a hot minute. Jonathan D. Carr is in the building, ladies and gentlemen. And Jonathan, I want to thank you for coming on. I know we've been talking about this for a minute, and you're finally here, baby.
Yeah.
And as I was saying before we hit record, it's a special moment that you came onto the show because I think we just hit a milestone of 100,000 views on YouTube. We got invited to the YouTube partner program. So I think there's some equivalent to that. I think either you come with that good energy, or you just a lucky charm, or this is just destiny at its finest. I don't know. What's your take?
Maybe it's all three. Maybe I'm thinking this is meant to happen. Like this is just a moment of destiny because y'all like deserve to be hitting this milestone and just getting even higher. So just hearing like all the good news that's been going on with Rise Urban Nation, I'm like, yeah, this is what's supposed to happen. Y'all are supposed to get higher. So let's just keep it up.
Let's keep it going. So, I like to start off the show. I usually like to ask people, I know a little bit about you, but for the people who don't know you, who is Jonathan D. Carr? And I know that's a deep question, and you could take that as far as wide as you want to go, but tell the people, allow me to reintroduce yourself.
Absolutely. Hello, world. My name is Jonathan Carr. I am the host of the upcoming with Jonathan Carr. You can find that on Spotify, Stitcher, Pandora, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music. I started this last year, around June 2022. Initially, my first ever interview was in February, but I was still figuring out like what I wanted to do with this show. I initially started my career like as a writer. I always loved novels and screenplays. So I just wanted to write as much stories as possible, and I still do write. But along the way, I found the absolute love in just talking to people and just having conversations, asking questions, and just hearing their stories. Because I often tell people everyone has a story to tell. And so you don't have to be some celebrity or best-selling author to like just tell me something that's just compelling and has impacted you in your life. And honestly, it's always beautiful when people like just break down their stories and their lives and just how they managed to overcome like hard times or enjoy the good times.
Yeah, I remember when we and you had some profound conversations, and I remember you saying that, and I love when you say it. Also reminds me of another guy that I've had on here, Nathan Howard. He used to have this saying too that was very similar to your saying. It's like he goes, "Tell your story before they do," because often our stories are not told by us, right? It's somebody else telling the narrative for us, and so I love talking to people like you who are just, I feel, are gifted writers and storytellers. Like how has the transition been for you? Like when you go from writing to the audio format, like what do you feel that's different about it? What's how different is it for you in your approach and your like how you engage with it and so forth? I've never dabbled into writing yet. That's something I want to do, but I'm curious to know how that differs the two mediums for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, really, it came off just from curiosity because I've always liked to think deeper into something. And I think just being a writer is what I think just no, let me rephrase. I think my curiosity is just sort of what drove me the most to being a writer because along being curious, I was always like sort of a creative kid. Like back in I was pretty much creative my whole life. I remember back when I was in middle school, I was like drawing like comic books in class. But what really, while I was writing, and that curiosity came best when I would meet other authors and other writers.
Mm.
And I remember one time Kevin Young, amazing poet, came down
Yeah.
to my college and gave a reading and a Q&A. And he did that twice, and both times I had asked him a question, one on like both on pretty much the influence of poetry. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember my professor telling me afterwards that Kevin Young was really impressed with my questions, and that
Really?
yeah, he said that I asked really interesting questions. So and that sort of inspired me to, just be more creative with my questions. The way I could get creative with my books or my scripts, or whatever, I
Mm-hmm.
could like be creative with stories and make people genuinely like think about the answer. And so the moment came when I had a friend, and he was my first ever guest on the show. His name was Zeke.
Mm-hmm.
He was Ezekiel Clare. He was a director. Well, he still is a director, but he had released his short film, and I was really curious about that. And so that's where the
Mm-hmm.
creativity sort of sparked, where I asked if I could just interview him on his process as a director, the film, and just him as a person. And I wanted to get real deep into that because the same way a book can make people stop and reflect on it, a good
Mm-hmm.
question can make people really stop and reflect on it. And so
Mm.
that's when I realized that as I went real deep into this interview, I was like, I can really do this. And it was also just
Mm.
sort of, and it wasn't just the creativity or the curiosity, but it was also sort of just like a little bit of an obsession of just
Mm-hmm.
being able to ask those questions and just hear the answers and just watch them really just pause and think about that question. And
Yeah.
that's when I decided like I wanted to keep doing this. And I see, I'm founding the upcoming.
Mm. I feel like a really good deep question, which I notice whenever I have conversations with you, I feel like they bring out the best in a person. It's almost like a prolific story that's being pulled out, and so you have that gift, and so I'm thankful that you shared that, and hopefully people who do interviews can take a little piece of that you've kind of dropped as a seed or gem here today. um, I'm curious, was Kevin like your inspiration into writing, or did you have
Yeah,
some
like
things that inspired you before that?
my very first inspiration to be a writer was Rick Riordan, the Percy Jackson series, because it
Mm,
started when I was in middle school. I was a diehard fan of the Percy Jackson books, and
mhm,
so when I was like 15, like before I hit 15, I was going back and forth with what I wanted to do. Like one instance, I wanted to be an actor. The next, I wanted to design video games, even though I was not the best at math. And eventually, but I always had ideas. Like I said, back when I was in middle school, I was writing like little comic books of just these different characters with mystical powers. And so eventually, looking back on it now, that same kind of passion, same ideas never went away. And because I read
mm,
Rick Riordan so much and I loved what he did, I was like, I can do this too. And
mm,
I was 15 when that first thought came. And now I'm 23 and that same passion hasn't gone away. It's, but it's so funny how that works, isn't it? It's
yeah,
just this few little string of things and ideas, passions, and inspirations can put you on the path you're going.
yeah, and sometimes it's exploring with it. Now, um, uh, did you do writing as your main career, or your whole career, or is it was like you were doing the writing as you were doing other things? Because I know most people they have a passion in the arts, but sometimes they have to do dual duty. Until their passion can feed them, right? So
That's
I'm curious.
exactly
Were you able to jump right in and start writing and get checks off of the words that you written, or what? Like, what was your career trajectory like?
Yeah, my career hasn't been like off. I would have loved if it was just off the bat, just writing, getting paychecks. But really, I've had a very interesting. I've had a very interesting life in just the career field because like my first job, like going just technical, like my first ever work was with this nonprofit called Neighborhood Youth Achievers, and I was there just
Yeah.
for a real short time, but I had nothing but respect for everyone within the organization, and because there was
Hmm.
really just a college prep programs to help kids, better themselves, learn new skills, try to be aware of what college they wanted to go to, and so that was a lot of fun and just a really nice like sense of community within that. But
Mm.
when going to my first like real job, I was a peer coach for the city of Los Angeles in 2018.
Hmm.
That was kind of cool because
Oh,
uh,
okay.
yeah, because before we actually got started, we were all got to meet then Mayor Eric Garcetti and
Nice.
got to shake hands with him, and that actually ended up in the newspaper. Me shaking hands with him. So yeah,
Oh,
that
you
was
was big time. You was big time. I didn't know you was big time like that.
yeah, but that's my point is that after that I was sort of my jobs varied so much. One instance I was
Okay.
like doing that, then a couple of years later I'm working at Amazon in the warehouses, and the next I'm working my big one of my biggest employers was this academy called the School of the New York Times, and I had taken that.
Hmm.
That actually was what drove my real love for New York, the
Yeah.
writers' capital of the country. But
Uh,
yeah, and so being able to work for them again was really cool. But
That's
finally,
cool.
so it's really varied. But I will tell you,
Uh
my
huh.
biggest employer,
Okay.
Penguin Random House. I was an intern
Really?
for them. Yeah, Penguin Random. We all know it's like one of the largest book publishers out there, and being able to work
Like,
for them was amazing because I really saw just how books are sold, marketed, analyzed, so they can be handed off to retailers and eventually to consumers. And
like.
you gotta really love just the power of books because,
Hmm.
especially during the pandemic, people were downloading books like crazy and
Hmm.
were buying them off Amazon and everything. It was just because it's not just for entertainment. There's power, as they say, knowledge is power. So
It
every time you read a
is.
book, you're bettering yourself. I think that's
Yeah,
also
and
why I
and
love
I
writing so much.
yeah, and I mean having I don't know how to explain it. Like just when you have a good book that you really dive into and you get curious about, it gives you new perspective. It can really change your world in so many different ways and dynamics. Whether it be from self help to a good inspirational story or just a fictional story that takes you to takes you out of the place you in to take you to another place that 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 you could just totally immerse yourself into and just be away from the world, right? Um, you know what
That's
I'm also thinking? You as a writer, like I don't know if you pull from real life at all to write, but like having all those different jobs and different experiences, do you sometimes get creative muse from these different experiences and pull it into your work?
I do. A lot of instances where, especially where I was a counselor, program counselor with the School of the New York Times. So I was dealing with a lot of students and also just interacting with my coworkers, my bosses. Every job, really, so far that I've had has given me an idea one way or another. And so,
Mm,
really should shorten my thing, but I just brought back so many memories. Really, while I was doing all these jobs, I was still writing and still just thinking of like, okay, every experience I'm in is just a new idea, which means I put it all in a
mm,
notebook or in my head, and when the time is right, I just get to writing.
mm. So it just naturally flows and comes out because it's been something that's been marinating with you. Now I want to talk about that. you interning at one of these amazing large book companies like that. I feel like that's like every writer's, especially if you're just starting out, dream come true. Like, I mean, there's nothing like that experience of seeing how everything's done. Now that you've seen how everything's done, and for lack of a better term, how the sausage is made, for writers who are trying to break into the industry or really trying to set themselves apart, what do you think most writers don't know that they should know based on your experience in that internship?
That's a good question. Well, I will agree that yeah, Penguin Random House was a dream company of mine, and you can imagine just how excited I was to even be able to land an interview with them. But one thing writers don't know that they should know is what are their key selling points? What are they like? They really need to
Mm,
like. I think a lot of writers need to really understand like, okay, who is this for? What are the selling points? Like, how am I different from another book? Because we when I was an intern, we were comparing books all the time based on prices, based on selling points, based on who the author was, based on
yeah.
who our clients were. So it's really just about really anything you sell, like or anything you try to get sold. That you're your own business.
Hmm.
You're your own business. So
Hmm.
always keep track of like what other books in your genre are, how they're selling, why they're selling, and what makes you different.
Hmm.
So because
Mm,
we're getting like thousands upon thousands of books like by the hour, Penguin Random House is. And so they're trying to look for how will this sell the best? Like how will people react to this right here? And yeah, and
hmm.
a lot of times people in Penguin Random House are reading books that are really good. Some might, but some will make it, some won't. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Like, um, with so many books coming in, I wonder how you really. I know niching down probably, and as you said, and really looking at your writing style as a business. Is there something that writers could do to separate themselves from all the noise when they're looking at doing this and trying to grab the attention of a major book company or grab a book deal?
Well, always get feedback. Always
Always
like
get
not
feedback.
just rely on your agents or your editors, but always rely on just like if on your, just ask your family, ask your friends, ask other writers, join writers
Hmm.
workshops. Like don't rely on just yourself. Like always see like okay, this is good because is the average everyday person that's going to be buying your book.
Yeah.
And so you always got
Hmm.
to think about like, okay, this person said they didn't like this or that, like, and then make sure that you know why they didn't
Hmm.
like this or that, and always be willing to change in one way or another. You don't have to change like the
Mm.
whole story, but if someone gives like some constructive criticism, like just always just think about, okay, maybe this might be necessary. And if you don't think it is for a good reason, then maybe it's not. But at the very least, be willing to make a change if you feel is necessary, and just listen to suggestions.
Yeah. I love that, and I think what you said is not just a good life skill, not just a good skill for writing books, but it's good life skill. Being open, like in business, you got to be open for feedback so that you know when to pivot. In life, it's like self growth, right? And I know you mentioned family in there, and I consider you somebody who's just a lifelong learner, and I've seen some of your development and your self growth throughout the years.
I want to
That
give one
we've
more point though.
known. Go ahead, give one more point. Go ahead.
Yes, as I said, it's a business, so always also read books of that genre that you're writing. Like, do you read books of genre?
Ooh.
Just like I said in the previous answer, read those books and see
Mm-hmm.
like how they were able to do it, and think, well, what makes you different from them.
Mm,
So yeah, not just be willing to
mm,
change, but also compare yourself. Just compare your books and say, how can I be better? What makes me different? What makes
mm,
me better? So I'm people will more likely to read me because, like I
mm.
said, your business you gotta keep growing, and
Yeah, you do.
writing is tricky to say the least.
Mhm.
It's tricky because there's thought because there's not just creative thought, but also just like I said, that business analytical thought to it. Just going further past all the all the editing, all the drafts.
Mhm. And everything that comes with that. Um, I'm thinking about your self growth and progression, and then I'm also thinking about the second phase that you gave us in that question. I'm gonna go to the self growth first, I think. And I'm curious to know because you had mentioned earlier, like don't be afraid of that feedback, get feedback from family, friends, et cetera, et cetera. Who in your family has contributed to the person that you are today?
Uh, so many people, but I'm gonna give the I'm gonna give a good handful of it. That's my parents, my grandparents. They've been just naming those four off the bat. Like they have been just the most supportive, the most loving people I've ever known. My mom has just always dedicated herself to just giving me the best and always giving me the most honest yet constructive feedback on something. Like she's
Mm.
especially with the upcoming, she always listens to my episodes and she's always saying like this is the mom. She's always hearing it, but she's always telling me like Jonathan, this like she's always asking me like Jonathan, like you're always like you talk about yourself a little bit more than a guest. Like, isn't this about your guests? And also, she's also saying like Jonathan, well, this right here seems a little oh like it could go differently, and like this doesn't sound like as natural. And I'm hearing this, I'm like, yeah, you're right. This needs to change. And so, and my father, he's always given me just the wisest words and is always rooting for me and is always just got a smile when I tell him what I've done.
Hmm.
And so it's really just the kind of family that my grandparents, I can go all day about them. They've been amazing for me, but it's just that kind of that close family love that's
That
really helps me get as far as I've gotten.
I love that your mom is your biggest fan and your biggest critic at the same time.
But
It's like,
she's the most constructive.
son, you need to tweak this. I don't know if that.
Yeah, but
She's
I've
both
also
constructive. What?
most constructive critic too. But I've also had like
Oh yeah.
mentors as well. I've had mentors who've gotten me, who've just really helped me build the upcoming. One gave me his mic and designed the logo for me. Shout out to you, Mr. King. And it's really been.
Hmm.
And then I've had others who've just reposted my social media posts who've told me like how much they enjoy my shows and have told me like how to speak,
Mm.
and I give that clear clear and just crisp words to when I'm speaking, when I'm giving interviews. So
Hmm.
it's just been a lot of help from a lot of people. So that's one of the reasons why I love what I do, because it gives me a chance to build more connections and give
Hmm.
support to others while getting support myself.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. The second part I'm holding on to from your first answer is the comparing, reading other books to compare yourself to them. Um, who does Jonathan read to compare himself against, and what books that you read to help up your game, your writing game, and your style, and really critique it and refine it.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I read because I'm sort of like a genre hopper. Like I'll go from like an action comedy to like a psychological thriller to a romance
Mm.
instantly. I'm just I'm I just never know when to stop. Really, it's all over the place. And so I'm always reading different authors. I my bookshelf is just topped with so many different people. I have works by Nick Stone. I have works by
Uh-huh,
James Hannaham, who was actually my instructor back at the School of the New York Times.
uh-huh,
You should definitely check him out. I also have
mhm,
books also I have a lot of nonfiction books too, especially with
mm,
financial literacy. Because I want to just that's just for self
mm,
growth, just trying to figure out how to protect and look after myself. So shout out to Robert Kiyosaki and
yeah, that's a good
still have
book.
my Rick Riordan books, Percy Jackson,
Mhm.
and I also have a couple comic books too from like IDW and Marvel because any way I
Ooh,
can,
we got some
yeah,
classics.
yeah. So any way I can like be inspired by a story, I'm more than open to.
Okay. Do you have a favorite that you've been knee deep into right now in this phase of life?
Um, Not right now, but for the longest time, I was deeply just moved by this one book called "On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous" by Ocean Vuong, and
Mm,
it actually drove me to write a book review on it, and that got
mhm.
published by my college. So it
Really?
was, yeah,
Wow.
yeah, this online little publication called Italics Mind. They picked it up and
Uh,
added it to one of the issues. So that was a huge achievement right there. But really, it was a fiction story, but it was told like so beautifully, like visually
mhm,
stunning, and it really just some of the lines I still think about, and
mhm.
you gotta love it because the story itself is really simple, but the way it's told
Yeah.
is phenomenal, and yeah, I couldn't help but
Mm.
appreciate that.
Is there a piece that you've written that is your favorite piece? Do you have a favorite piece that you've written so far?
Well, there is one piece, but I'm still writing it, so I won't. I don't want to go too much into that, but I will tell you one piece that I
Oh, okay.
have. I will tell you one piece that I have written because back in
Okay.
the day I wrote a lot of short stories. It
Okay.
was this one story. It was about this boy, and it was taking place in the Roaring Twenties. And so this boy
Mhm,
lived named Joseph lived a really hard life, surrounded by bullies and
mhm,
an abusive alcoholic father. And so one night he goes to sleep and he's whisked away into this just like fantasy world uh, in his dreams.
mm,
It was called and they called it the Sea of Dreams. And within it, he learned just
mhm,
self love, positivity, standing up to his bullies. He learned to be brave. So it was
mm,
just basically giving him the strength and the help he desperately needed so he can go back out and face the real world.
mm. That's
And that
amazing. I like
story,
that.
like, I remember writing that just out of nowhere and just the way it came together, I was just like, this is awesome.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story. I'm about to check that out. Um, I'm thinking about um as we talked a little bit about the journey and the self growth. Want to go back into that just a little bit because I think you are fascinating and I'm curious more about like what makes up you. Um, and you've had all these different jobs, careers, these experiences, and you've been able to put it into such great work to share with the world. Start this podcast and a lot of interactions there. In this past year, I know you turned me down the first time, but now you're here. What have you learned about yourself in the past year?
What have I learned about myself in this past year? For one, that I just really love talking to people. That's a start. I
Mm,
really love conversations, and I really love interacting because for the longest time I was an introvert. Like
mm-hmm,
I was never really good in like social like situations, like parties and just being out on college campuses, especially when I was a kid on the playground. I just felt so awkward. But the more
mm-hmm.
people I talk to, the more I genuinely love, more I just genuinely love people in general because
Yeah.
everybody has had their highs and their lows, and see somebody still like willing to reach their dreams, and whether it be a doctor, an artist, entrepreneur,
Mm-hmm.
it's really touching, and I love, and
Yeah.
it's inspired me to reach out to more people as the old me would not have done that, and
Mm,
just go out and say hi, my name is, and just build a relationship.
I love that. And I think we need more of that in today's world. I remember when the pandemic happened and everything shut down, like people were more, I don't know, I want to say disconnected or just
Isolated.
uh, isolated. Yeah, that's the perfect word right there. And it created this, I don't know, this whole nother world of angst and just loss our ability to connect, communicate, engage, and share experiences. And it doesn't matter whether you're introvert or extrovert. Like that period of time um, grew another level of appreciation for just the human connection that you sometimes can't get um, when you're isolated, and the importance of that. So I can resonate with that. Um, what should someone read if they want to be a creative thinker? Uh, I've often heard this question asked to me, and um, I don't know if I have a set answer, but like maybe you read books that helped you help bring out some creative juices. So, what would your answer be to that question? What would someone read to be a creative thinker?
Yeah, that is a good question. Hmm. You know, honestly, to be a creative thinker, there's more to it than just reading fiction. Because I also
Mm,
recommend they read some nonfiction as well. Because, for
mm-hmm,
example, I was reading the autobiography of Malcolm X, and
mm-hmm,
people should understand that even in your normal everyday life, there's still some creativity that can be told from because something extraordinary happens. So
mm-hmm.
I would recommend reading. Can't think of a book right now because I've always been creative, so it's just kind of hard to think about. But I would say just expand their horizons or reading preferences. Like for example, if they are good at fiction, pick up a few nonfictions and see how that's read, whether it be through
Mm,
an autobiography or something about arts or politics, and then just go back to fiction and just see if they read nonfiction, just try some fiction because
mm-hmm,
really just seeing how all the different ways a story can be told can inspire some creativity and some awareness of
mm-hmm.
just like the world around them if they're reading a lot of nonfiction. But
Yeah,
it's really it's really just how I do things. Just never staying in one place, just diversifying, expanding my horizons.
You know, it's funny. Like when I hear you give your answer is very, very parallel to how you live your life because you're a natural curious person, and then also you don't stay in one genre. You go across many different, from personal self help books to thrillers to like, so you stay in many different areas on purpose, and you're already naturally curious, so that even makes you even better as a writer because you're not in one place because you're able to bring all these things together and to create something beautiful. So like I think you just naturally do it, so you don't, it's hard for you to think about it, whereas somebody who doesn't naturally do it, they can learn from just your story and then the advice you gave because it kind of works in parallel with what you already do. I don't know if that makes sense.
And it does. It does. I just really hadn't thought of it that way.
Right.
But yeah,
uh,
it's just.
so
Go ahead.
no. Did I interrupt your thought?
No, I was just gonna conclude and say that some of the best artists are remembered because they stepped out of the same horizons everybody else and they went deeper.
Mhm.
They just were always just looking for inspiration. So just
Mm.
always look for inspiration because it's there.
Always look for inspiration. Find your next muse. Um, what have you learned in past experiences when you're trying to connect with others to look for inspiration or to collaborate? What have you learned from others?
I've learned to I've learned to look for a connecting point, like for or a
Mm,
connection point. So when I'm reaching out to people, I always make sure to read up and look for something about them, whether it be their career, what they've done, their accomplishments. If they've been on other interviews before, I read or listen to those. And it's easier too if they're also a writer or just an artist in general, because they'd be like, hey, I'm that same thing. I really
mm-hmm,
like what you've got going on here. And it also makes it easier when I interview them because I can get into those kind of questions that make them stop and think. But I look for something that I know will get their attention. I know will let them know that, hey, I see you. I know what you're doing, but I want to know more
mm-hmm,
about you. And if I'm able to find something in common with them, I say, that's great too, because people love talking to others who share the same interests or the same ideals or the same hobbies. And so it's just looking for what's that one little point where we can just sit down and be able to chat with each other.
mm-hmm,
So it's never I can never go into an interview like blind or just asking like what exactly do you do and like how do you do it, because I want to let them know that they're not wasting their time talking to me. I see them.
yeah, yeah. Now, what do you do to manage your time? Because you're such a creative and you're so in so many different. I feel you have various things that you like to dibble and dabble in, and interests and areas of curiosity. So how do you, and then also you're doing the job, you're doing the writing thing, you're doing the now the podcasting thing, or or your show. Um, how do you manage all this? How do you manage your time? I'm
Mm.
like,
Well,
what keeps you?
after I left Penguin Random House, my time got more free, so it's given me some extra hours to look at. Okay, because everything I write, I do first in my head. I like to flesh everything out and just let it
Mhm,
sit and manifest for a time, because if I can't see it, then I know my audience can't see it either, and so they're not going to read
mm,
it. So I think it out. I think everything first, so that gives me plenty of time to do what I got to do for the rest of the day. Whether it's planning out the upcoming's promotion, whether it's
mhm,
working working and trying to find more ways to build income. It's and just living everyday life. Going out for hikes or for jogs, or just being
Mm-hmm.
around in LA. It's always something to do every day. But when it's finally time to get to writing, I'm able to just I got to sit down and just get to writing, just do it,
Mm-hmm.
because that
Yeah.
way I know that my ideas are on paper and I can really see them.
Yeah. Um. Well, what is your personal mission in life, and how are you currently carrying it out?
Hmm. What is my personal mission in life?
And how are you currently carrying it out?
My personal mission in life is to take all the ideas I've had and just release them, let them out for others to see. Because as a writer,
Mm-hmm.
I'm always I'm always coming up with new ideas, new stories, new ways to entertain people. And that's always kind of been my biggest goal, to
Mm-hmm.
entertain and just give something for people to enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
But after I became so that's still my goal as a writer, to just do what I love and give people something to enjoy. And that comes from
Mm-hmm.
books or screenplays. I'm a writer, period. So I never want to be tied to one
Mm-hmm.
thing. And that's my, but above all, my personal mission in life is to just be able to do what I love with nothing holding me back at all. So just
I
sort of
like that.
having that freedom, really. As for the upcoming, being a host of the upcoming, my personal goal is to just always be able to uplift all my guests and let everybody who's listening know, hey, this could be you on the show. If you got a career
Like,
that you're working towards, this you could be on this show. You could be telling people your story, because there's so many people out
like,
there who would love a platform to speak on.
and which speaks to that, and that's a perfect segue of to how you're fulfilling that now, which is the show. So tell us a little bit about this show, man. I'm like, how did this show get born? What was your thought process behind it, and what has it grown to be today? So tell us a little about the show.
All right, of course. So yeah, as I said, this was sort of came out of an obsession for having more conversations and hearing more people talk about their life. And it started so small, just from a simple interview in my college dorm room with nothing but a recording app and my friend there to talk to me. And now I'm reaching my 38th episode, which is about to be released on Sunday, 7 Eastern Time. So it's really just been an amazing journey. So my goal was, when I first started this, I wanted to just hear more about people who were working towards their dream careers, because and I never wanted to be just one certain career. Like, I never wanted to just talk to musicians or painters or writers. I wanted to hear from engineers, from other podcasters, from entrepreneurs, from architects, people who are working hard for something. I want to give them that
Hmm.
platform and just lift them up and say, "Hey, everybody, this is a person you want to hear about." And that's why I always my rules are to never just be basic. Asking like, "Okay, where are you from? What do you do? Like, what inspired you to do it? How does it feel to be doing this and that?" It's just like, I want to get deep into the to the heart of it. It's like, why do you do what you do? Like, I asked what inspired you to do it, but I asked like also how they inspired you to go forward. Like,
Mm,
what were some lows that you were most thankful for, and like, how did you overcome those
mhm,
lows? And I also make sure to look into the field that they're in. And let's, for example, if there are musicians or like singers, I ask them like, okay, how have you thought about the music industry? And like, if you want to get big, record label? How are you going to protect yourself from being exploited? And so, what's a skill
Mm-hmm.
that you really want to learn but haven't really mastered yet? It's just it's just always something where I'm looking more into them as a person, not just what they do, because that's how I know
Mm-hmm.
that people can really understand my guest.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Um, I resonate with that so much because there's some parallels and similarities to what we try to do here at Rise Urban Nation. Because I remember just really wanting to amplify voices of people that look like us. Because there's so many of our young folks that can't be what they can't see. Right?
Mm.
We've always sold this dream of that. The only way you gonna get out the hood is if you got a hot 16 or you got a wicked jump shot, right? Like, and there's more ways to solidify your skills and talents and make a good living doing so. And I've met some amazing people along the way, so I'm glad to see somebody else like yourself coming along and amplifying those voices as well. That there's not enough of us in this industry, and that we need more of us. And the fact that you're doing it through audio and you got a strong pen game, I'm excited to see what stories come out of that to help really amplify just what you're doing and the inspire the next generation.
Absolutely.
Um,
I gotta say, some of my guests are just proof of just that, against the stereotype that black people are only meant to be, rappers or influencers or basketball players. Because, I mean, some when one aspires to be that, then that's fine. Like, live your life, like do your dreams. Like, if you are inspired by that, like I've had some folks on my show who do basketball and are really talented at it. Like, I give them nothing but
mhm,
respect. But it's not just basketball and music. Like, my one guest I had, named Sky, he's a mechanical design engineer. Like, my episode two guest
mm,
founded his own company, and now he's working to continue to get funds and progress that so we can build it out even further. And my other guest, episode 19, was he's also a writer, and he wants to further improve education, especially amongst children. So he
mhm,
is all like, there's always someone who's going to come out one way, more ways than one, and just
mhm.
make a change, because that's ultimately what matters, being able to bring a positive impact.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Um, Throughout this wonderful 20 something year journey, what's one good lesson life has taught you?
One good lesson: you want to do something, just do it.
Was that just do it? Just be
Yeah,
like Nike, just do it. Do you got the Nike
just
on
do
your?
it.
You got be like Nike and just do it.
Yes, like Nike right there. And just do it right there. And it's just, don't be afraid of what others think.
Mhm,
Don't be afraid of yourself. Don't be afraid of yourself. Don't let your own doubts, your own insecurities tell you can't do something. Like me, I wanted to start writing a book, and I just started writing it. I wanted to make this
mhm,
podcast, and I just did it. And I didn't care, like, what the limits were. You just gotta try. That's something all of my guests. That's what I respect about all of my guests. They had a goal, and they they just went. They're going out to get that goal. They've had a lot of lows and a lot of hits in their lives that I know just really rocked them to their soul, but they got up, and they kept moving, and I have nothing
mhm.
but respect for that.
Nah, I love that advice. Um, there's going to be a lot of young people that's inspired by like what you just said there, and I'm thinking about that young high school student who's about to graduate, has no idea what they want to do. They got some passion, some dreams. They hear your episodes, like, dang, I've been writing, but it's been in my little journal and notebook. But Jonathan just inspired me. What's
Yes.
some advice you would give
Also,
to that young person listening to this right now?
appreciate the lows because, especially
Mm,
when you've overcome those lows, because those lows are there to give you strength.
mm,
When I got into Penguin Random House, it took me 2 years to get into that company. I was facing rejection after rejection. And times like, sorry, application is the role is closed right now. It's not taking any more applications. And it would just be so many times I would send out applications. I would just improve my resume. I would just be looking out for deadlines, and I would just apply for that role. And one instance, I gave it one more shot, and then I finally got that screening. It's like a phone interview, and then I was like, yes, that went good. Then finally, real virtual interview, and then 2 days later, they said yeah. So it's really it's really been just a lot of times where I had hit lows, and even like as a writer, I had I didn't get like really published in Italics Mind, the online publication that SUNY purchased. I didn't get included in their issues until like my senior year. So
mm-hmm.
all the times I was applying, and they said no, and so I finally got it. So it's taught me to just continue to be tenacious and to continue to try and get what you want. So yeah, just be grateful for the lows because you gotta learn to overcome those lows. You gotta grow from those lows because that's how you get stronger. That's how you get better, wiser.
Yeah,
Lows are, things are hard
that
before they're easy.
they do. They are. I had a deja vu moment because I remember us conversating before even that had came into fruition. And uh, wait, who introduced us again? I remember somebody was telling me like, "Oh yeah, just I don't know what he wants to do, but talk to him. I
Yeah,
think you guys
Martian.
would get along great." There you go, boom. And I was like, "Sure, yeah." And then I learned from you just as much as any person who talked to you would learn just how amazing you are, and then those thought provoking questions that you had. And then I remember us talking about that, and then I remember you sharing with me when you got in, and my heart was so happy. It was just. It was like when you won, I felt like I won. I was like, "Yes, we in there, baby.
You did it.
We did it."
Absolutely.
Now that you've had a little taste of the industry, I mean, you're still in the industry, but now you're like more of a entrepreneurial in this industry, and instead of being a corporate person. What does the industry look like when you think of people who look like you who want to come in, be writers and so forth? What does the future look like in your eyes in this industry?
Okay, so as a writer, or as like you said as a writer, because I was also going to ask like as a podcaster too, or because
Yeah, you can do both. Let's start with the writer first, because I know that's your first love. So let's start with the writing, and then we can go into the podcasting.
well, well as a writer, one thing after I had my internship with Penguin Random House, it's taught me that I should always just strive for making every story even better than the last. Always looking to
Mm,
grow. Never, I don't want to be like just. I want more quality each time rather than just quantity. Because you write
mm,
like 100 books in your lifetime,
mm-hmm,
but how will you feel if each one was rejected? Until finally you wrote 101, your 101st book, and that one you chose to improve and you chose to like do better. You chose to like get new inspiration, something different, and that one was finally picked up.
mm-hmm.
So the one thing this industry has taught me is to always bring 100%. Actually, no. After you
Yes.
brought 100%, bring 101, because there's always room for. There's so many artists. There's so many authors out there. You gotta figure out how can I not only improve myself, but how can I let people know like it's me writing it.
Hmm.
It's me, not just another nameless face. And I do that by
Yeah.
seriously looking for, okay, from a business standpoint, what are my selling points? How can I better reach reach this audience? Better yet, how is this story I'm writing better than my last one?
Mm.
That's why I continue to get
Mm.
feedback. That's why I continue to read books. And if I'm writing a screenplay, I continue to watch movies or TV shows. Continue to just think like, how can I improve? Because
Mm.
life is, for me, it's just that upwards hill.
Mm.
Gotta keep going.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Um, I want to end the interview off like this because I know you got the writing, you got the podcast. Go ahead and tell me all the projects. We dove into the podcast somewhat, but tell me everything that you're working on now that you're excited about, and where can people find you? How can they connect with you?
Absolutely. So you can you can find me on LinkedIn, Jonathan Carr. You find me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn every single day. So if you want to shoot me a message, you want to follow me, I appreciate all that. And I do posts of the upcoming podcast on there. The upcoming is not going anywhere. Like we've only
Yeah.
just getting started. The best, like as my old career coach used to say, the best is yet to come. So I'm still and I still got to give major props to to everyone who's been on my show, who's given their stories, whether they were a basketball player, whether they were an entrepreneur, whether they were engineer, musician, podcasters, just doctors. Everybody there has made the show what it is, and I'm grateful to all of them. And
Hmm.
I'm working on the upcoming blog and trying to build the upcoming website, and so they continue to I also continue to follow the upcoming at the underscore upcoming podcast on Instagram. You can get
Hmm.
updates and announcements there. As for everything else I'm gonna be doing, I'm still writing. I'm still
Hmm.
getting ideas soon. I got some stories that I want to get released in the near future. Some as Ping Random House calls it titles. I want to get those out.
Hmm.
We get so many. They get so many books. They call books of graduating kind of titles. But
Uh-huh.
there's really just been. It's just been a really incredible journey, and so
Yeah.
every inspiration is just going to come something beautiful.
Yeah. I love it, Jonathan. From the bottom of my heart, from one podcast to another, to one brother to another, I want to thank you and I want to give you your flowers. I want to salute you for everything that you're doing, not only for our community, but just amplify others and um, other voices. And I'm just appreciative of this time moment together. And I wish you nothing but much success, my brother. And then whatever my podcast, me, myself, whatever we could do to support you, you just let us know. It's nothing but a phone call. We got you. Um, so yeah, let's give you those flowers. And any last words of wisdom for the people before we sign off today?
Folks, even if you got to work another job, do what you know makes you happy. Yeah, just do it, because life is too short for us to be doing nothing but just crammed in an office, just doing it just for the sake of collecting a paycheck and staying alive. We got to go out. Don't be afraid to, look for, meetups, look for, workshops where people are doing what you also enjoy doing. Don't be afraid to go to areas like different dinner parties, or just call up your friends, be like, hey, what are you doing, and just meet new people. Like there's so many of us in the world that you gotta go out. You gotta have that courage to just make new friends and gain new connections, because really you don't want to end up at a point in your life where you're completely alone, or you're lonely and you're
Mm,
just wondering how this happened. No, you gotta be proactive. You gotta go out and just build those connections and just have those experiences, because they're worth it in the long run.
mm. I
And
love
also,
that. They Go ahead. And also,
as I said before, do what you love. So if you're a painter, if you're an engineer, a woodworker, if you're just someone who, like a carpenter, or just maybe a coder, even if you're working another job, continue to do what you love. Do that job, or do that hobby, because somewhere along the line you might end up being able to make money off of what you really love. And there you go, your passion has come to life, and now you feel even more fulfilled. So just keep
mm,
grinding, keep doing it, keep doing what you love. Because, like I said, life's too short to not be doing what you love, and just keep going. You got this.
mm. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Words of wisdom for Jonathan D. Carr. Do what you love. Do what makes you happy. Make those connections. And speaking of making connections, make sure you connect with my brother. Go on this Instagram right now, the up and coming. We're going to support that podcast. You better support that podcast. And we'll catch you on the next time.
Take care, y'all.